Hello, welcome to my channel, the Coherence Path. My name is Stefan, and the purpose of this channel is just to simply share thoughts and ideas based on my own life experiences, research, or things that I've learned from others. The topic for today is vibration, and if there's anything to that. Now, this video is sort of catered toward a group of individuals who are out there. That group is fairly large. I'm talking in the millions of people who buy books on manifestation, on raising your vibration, on frequency, on all these other subjects. And I want to clear up a few things, at least in my opinion, based on my experience. Now, the general idea that is out there, and again, you may not be part of this crowd, but that's okay. Maybe there's something else in this talk that is going to be useful to you. The general idea is that if we have a higher frequency or vibration, as it's put, then we will manifest things much easier. And there's a lot of different ways to raise your your vibration or your frequency, and then by doing that, then everything just seems a lot easier. Now, I used to believe this. I used to be a raw vegan. That means that I only ate raw fruits and raw vegetables, and that's all I ate. I didn't drink coffee, I didn't eat meat, I didn't eat any sort of cooked food. Now, I will say that that was probably the healthiest time that I've ever experienced in my life as an adult. I was probably 165 pounds. I was svelte, I was strong, I could do 40 pull-ups without even breathing hard. I could run across the field as fast as I could and stop on a dime without huffing and puffing, which now, 61, if I go up some stairs, I'm going to do some huffing and puffing because, I've just been eating regular food, and that's fine. Another time in my life, I was a vegetarian, so I ate cooked things, but I didn't eat meat. And I've dabbled with the carnivore diets and intermittent fasting and all that sort of stuff. And I've done fasting for as long as 31 days. So I've done a lot of things with my body and what I ate as sort of experiments, but also based on what I was being told by the grand majority out there that are teaching these principles of vibration and frequency. I've had a near-death experience as well, and so there's a lot of people talking from that perspective that, well, once you raise your frequency through meditation and your vibration, you'll just be closer to the energy of the universe and everything will just happen easier for you. Now, you may experience some of these things and you may not, or perhaps you have never thought of some of these things and your life is perfectly fine. The point of my discussion today is whether any of that is as relevant as just being coherent with who you are as a being. I'll give you a couple of examples. Now, I had lived a pretty monastic life. I had watched my diet really closely. I meditated 3 times a day, and I would go into meditation and be able to, it seemed, because of these things, attract to myself the income that I needed through my business. I never advertised. I never asked anybody for work, not once. Even if I was standing with a client and finished the project, I would never say, hey, is there anything else you want me to do? I would just shut my mouth and I'd let them offer if they did. Many times, a lot of times, they did. My point is that I had the viewpoint that through all these external things that I was doing, meditating, eating the proper foods, stretching and exercising and doing things that supposedly raised my vibration, that's what was allowing me to manifest things. Now, then I had some things happen to me. One of those, as an example, was that I got pneumonia. And I was out doing a job, doing it in the rain, and not really thinking, and I ended up catching pneumonia. Now, I laid in bed for about 2 months. I didn't really have anybody else to take care of me. And my youngster at the time, I would get up and fix them food, and I would put on a really good face of how things were going, but I would go back and I would just lay in bed. And during that period of time, I knew that I also had to create income. So I thought, well, geez, I feel like hell. I just, I can't hardly breathe. My body hurts. And so I did see my income start to change. All of a sudden, things just started disappearing. About probably a week or 10 days into the pneumonia. And then I laid there and realized, you know what? I'm not under anybody's command. I'm not under anybody's tutelage or guidance on how to run my life. And I just laid there and closed my eyes and I said, my income is just the same as it was before. The resources I need are coming now. And they'll come in such a way that they will complement my present situation. And they did. So I ended up getting things that didn't take me very long, but earned, a decent amount for what I did, that were interior in a nice warm environment that my body could handle, and that based on somebody else's schedule, I could only be there for 3 or 4 hours at a time. And that's exactly what happened. So my experience reflected what I needed consciously. And this continued for another 2.5 months. And that experience, as well as many other experiences, taught me that, my ability to manifest was not dependent upon anything. It wasn't except for my own consciousness. Another situation happened as well, as far as changing my diet. I stopped eating raw foods. I stopped exercising. I figured, if all the people that are telling you, the doctors are telling you need to walk 10,000 steps a day, well, I do that every day. I get up and I work, for several hours on my feet, lifting wood, equipment, and all sorts of different things. I don't need exercise. I get it every day. And so I stopped exercising. And yes, I gained weight because I changed my diet. I also got older and my hormones changed. And I could go on a fast right now and drop 30 pounds if I want. That's not an issue. I've done many fasts in my life, 20 days, 30 days, and it's a good tune-up for the body. Anyway, my point is that no matter what I've eaten, no matter what injuries I've suffered, I've been able to use my mind to create what I needed. Another situation happened. So I went skiing with my youngster and a couple of their friends, and I was going slow, but I had a wreck, and I tore my rotator cuff. And if you can relate, then you know what I'm talking about. And if you can't, Google, are rotator cuffs painful? They are. They're extremely painful, and you get no sleep. In fact, for about 1.5 years, I got about an hour of sleep a night at best. I was pretty much up all the time. And then I was going to work and doing what I needed, and still, things showed up. Things manifested. Now, I began to ask myself why. Why is there so much emphasis on vibration, on frequency, and all this sort of thing when I was able to maneuver and move through these different circumstances pretty much with ease without worrying about any of that at all. And when I look back upon the conversations I had with myself, And those conversations were basically, well, this is what I accept now. It doesn't matter what's going on now. That doesn't exist. The only thing exists is what I need moving forward. And that's how those things were created. Now I want to flip the coin a little bit, shift us over to a different point of view, into another arena or area of civilization. Now, I'm speaking to everybody in this spiritual community, which in my opinion, everything's spiritual. I don't care whether you're laying drunk on your porch and, you just got fired for your bad behavior, or you're sitting in a lotus position floating off the ground, floating on the floor in a Tibetan temple. It's all spiritual. It's all part of the human experience, and we're spiritual beings. Everything's spiritual because we're spiritual beings. So everything is all part of the same process of consciousness. So within this community, however, of those who are spiritual, who sort of set themselves aside from normal society, and I was part of that. I was going to all kinds of events and cacao ceremonies and dances and meditations and all that stuff, right? Okay, so I can speak from experience, but I also grew up on a farm and a ranch around people who never even gave a thought to any of this stuff. They went to church every day. They custard their dogs and beat their goats. I mean, whatever they did, they were just doing what they were doing. But I don't mean to say that negatively. There's actually just what you call salt of the earth people who every day get up in the morning, they go to a real good job that they've created, whether it's a trucking company or a farm or a ranch or managing a grocery store or your local accountant, whatever it is. There's a whole segment of society that has nothing to do with the spiritual community. So how do those people manifest things if they don't even think about this process of manifestation, of raising their vibration, of changing their frequency? How is it that they own a house and lots of cars and toys and they eat good and have money left over to go on vacations? Well, that's because their consciousness is what it is. It's open and it's operating at a structural from a structural blueprint of beliefs. So we can have whatever beliefs we want, and that's perfectly fine, but our beliefs are really what direct our lives. My beliefs directed my life. All the mistakes I've made, all the good things that I was able to accomplish so far, those are based on my beliefs. And it's the same for each segment of society. Nobody is luckier than anyone else. Nobody has a higher frequency or a better vibration. As much as we have contrast and contrariness in our culture, as much as two sides might not like the other, we're all spiritual beings living an experience that you could all say is spiritual. From people in the White House to, people pumping your gas. So when we see something different, we think, well, that's just not a very good vibration, or that's just not a very good alignment, or that's just not a very good frequency. But I beg to differ as far as that goes. And I'm speaking again to that one segment of the community that tends to think that there is something outside of themselves that they have to do to be better. I thought that for years. I thought I was always having to improve myself. I was always having to raise my frequency. I was always having to try to change my vibration. And what I found was that was a bunch of baloney. And that's my personal viewpoint. In fact, I think it's just a waste of time and it's a waste of money. I have a whole box of books. It probably weighs 150 pounds of books that I bought on frequency and vibration and all this sort of thing. And when I moved out when I was 14 years old, I moved out and lived with a retired couple who had 13 dogs. And then at 15, for the summer, I moved back with my parents, and then I moved out again about the middle of that summer. Then I found an apartment and finished my last year of high school living on my own. And what did I do? I was 15. I had had an interesting upbringing, let's put it that way. My parents were, well, I'm not even going to talk about that. It doesn't matter. But my point is that at 15, I was completely and wholly unprepared to be an adult or to handle anything that had to do with things about being an adult. But with $150 and an old truck, I moved out. It turned out that my brother was leaving town and I could sleep on his couch for a week. And in that week, I found a job and I found an apartment for $70 a month. That decision to move out, those decisions to accept, oh, that's an opportunity, I'll take it, a week on the couch, that decision to go get a job at a small shoe store, that decision to find an apartment, knocking on doors and looking at ads in the newspaper, all those decisions solidified me having my own apartment, one-bedroom apartment in a Victorian house with a nice big porch. It was not far from the high school in that town. It was a completely different town too. I didn't know anybody there except for my brother, and he had left. And I had that job over probably about a month, and my boss said, I'm going to have to let you go. We don't need you anymore. And he said, go back to high school. So I did. And then I went and found another job. I ate top ramen and boiled eggs for 2 weeks on the $80 I had left over. But anyway, my point is that, you know, I didn't need to raise my vibration. I didn't need to change my frequency. All I had to do was make little decisions. And those decisions ended up getting me where I needed to go. And that's how the majority of the people in this world live their lives. Whether you're in India or England or on a farm out in the middle of, you know, Wyoming or Kansas, people just make decisions, and that's how they move through life. And so they're not thinking about raising their frequency, or they're not thinking about raising their vibration. Now, I'm not saying that those things aren't a good thing to practice, because through sitting in meditation, as an example, you lower your heart rate and the blood pressure, you open yourself up to thinking about ideas that perhaps you've been ignoring, and your consciousness is able to come into the full present moment so that you can ask yourself what you can do to change. Those are all conscious decisions, though. If you sit in meditation and you don't do anything, you just sit there and breathe and you're hoping that, you know, some angel's going to show up and tell you what to do, it's most likely not going to happen. Now, I've had very spontaneous visual journeys in meditation that I got paintings out of, and I painted the paintings, and then I sat with the painting and I asked the painting what message it was giving me. But those messages were all from my conscious, because everything is your consciousness. So when we look around at different people doing different things, that's who we are. That's our consciousness within everything. Because we are not just the person that we think is Joe or Betty or whoever or whatever your name is. You're not just that person. You're not just that human. You're actually a pinprick of attention from a consciousness that is in and through everything. Trees, animals, people, everything. When they say everything is one, it is. There is no duality. So if there's no duality, think about this, and this is again going back to the group of people who I am making this video for. If everything is one, if everything is unified, and there's no duality, why would I have to eat a certain diet, say mantras, write intentions down? Why would I do any of that stuff? Think about it. Those are external practices to try to change your internal self. when your internal self is unified with everything that there is. And you might say, well, I'm trying to, change my subconscious mind. But I'm here to tell you that you don't have a subconscious mind. That's another lie that's out there. And I've proved it. Actually, I didn't prove it at all. Science proves it. And if you look it up, you'll find that that's the case. My book, The Manifestation Lie, gets into this in depth. Basically, we're all conscious all the time. It's just that our consciousness is so broad. It's like a radio that has infinite channels, is paying more attention to certain things and not to others. Because we're looking through the lens of senses, our eyes, our sense of smell, touch, hearing, and we're paying more attention to those than we're paying attention to our greater consciousness. If somebody is truly psychic and intuitive, they have broadened their bandwidth to hear to receive the sensitivity that is already present in their own consciousness. They're not pulling it from someplace else. They're just aware of themselves. Now, you have to be careful of what you interpret as true and untrue. Just like you could have a dream, but that doesn't mean it's true. You can have a psychic impression, that doesn't mean it's true. But sometimes it's right on. I had a visual vision once. I was wide awake, my eyes were open, I was talking to somebody, and I had a vision that went inside my brain, and it blocked out all reality. And when it was over, my friend, the girlfriend at the time when I was a teenager, said, "What happened to you? Your face went blank, and it's like you were gone." And the vision of a car accident happened specifically down to the detail of the truck that hit me being red, a Ford 1F50, at the exact street, Sprague in Spokane, Washington, just like the vision I had. When I was clear of that vision, I told her, I said, "This is a vision I just had." And she was like, "What? That's weird." And then 2 weeks later, it happened exactly the way it did. So things can be a small window into the timeline of what we're experiencing, but for the most part, that's pretty rare. So when we sit in meditation, sure, you can receive some information and you can attribute it, whether it's to an angel or Jesus or Muhammad or whatever you want, but we're all connected. Everything is one. The only thing that separates us is our senses. As soon as you flip-flop out of this body or this perspective that you have a body, you'll see that you're just connected to everything there is. And that you're like, you just sort of shake yourself and like, wow, that was kind of fun. I was being a human. And you'll come back and you'll do it again. Because the reason why we're here is to learn how to be kind, to learn how to be loving, to learn internal skills and measurements of integrity within ourselves. We could make the worst mistakes in this life, and boy, I'll tell you, I've probably made most of them. But you can come back from those and just develop yourself as being a good person. Whether somebody else agrees with it or not, whether, whatever people's opinion is, that's their opinion. You can't change that. But for yourself and for anyone you come in contact with, you can be present. You can be a good person. Not act good, not act kind, not act loving, like Thomas Campbell says, but actually be loving. Actually be kind. Not out of any internal motivation to try to, get something out of somebody or be something you're not. But just be coherent with alignment, that centered balance within yourself of being who you are. And that is the only frequency. That is the only vibration. That is the only alignment that matters. Everything else doesn't matter. You could do Tai Chi, which is a great practice. I did that and practiced that and taught that for some time. You can do intentions and vision boards and all that. That's perfectly fine. But first, have the alignment within yourself to be coherent within yourself. If you're doing all those things to try to fix yourself, well, I'll eat better because I'll have a better vibration and more people will like me. it's not going to change who you are. We're here to change who we are. That's why we come here. That's why we're in this experience. We're here to learn, and we're here to grow, and everybody will face something completely different than somebody else. You know, one person's experience will be completely different than somebody else's. One thing will work for one person and won't for others. You might watch my channel and get, you know, some tidbit out of it, and somebody else will be like, that's the silliest stuff I've ever heard in my life, is a waste of my time. The same thing with yoga or calisthenics or you know, meditating 10 times a day. I don't know. Whatever it is you choose to do, ecstatic dances and ceremonies, do them all. But I want you to just maybe consider taking the time out to sit with yourself quietly and ask yourself if you are coherent and you're resonating with all that is, if you're resonating with just being comfortable with realizing that you are everything, that you are complete. There's nothing else to do except enjoy your life and be kind. And that's it. There is no other purpose for us to be here other than to learn to go down that path. And you never reach enlightenment. I'm sorry to tell you, but it doesn't exist. Enlightenment is a stage of awareness where, well, I've arrived. I'm like, if the level is 10, I'm like right at 9.999. And the moment you think you've arrived there, you're gonna get bored. And all your confidence, you're gonna think, geez, you know, I'm one with the universe now. Everything's peachy keen. I could just tell everybody how to get here, right? And you just keep sitting there. Here I am in enlightenment. And eventually you realize, you know, there's challenges that I just never took on my path. I should go back and do those. And then you start all over again. And that's what life is. It's a series of challenges, just like the Buddha said. And the only way to get there, there's two roads, through pain or through acclamation of understanding. So what I'm trying to share here is a little bit of understanding. If I can save you time sitting in some seminar or some guru trying to tell you to raise your vibration as he takes your $5,000, then hopefully that helps. If I'm saving you the time of sitting down every day and writing out mantras and intentions and trying to change your subconscious programming, or listening to a bunch of MP3 recordings of you're rich, you're rich, you're rich, you're rich, you're rich, you know, then good. Hopefully I may have helped. But when we become resonant with who we are, we don't need any of that stuff. And there's a great many people walking around resonant with who they are, but they're not part of any sort of spiritual community. They're not part of any raising of the vibration or frequency group. They just aren't. They haven't read a self-help book ever. They get up in the morning and they go about their lives and they do what they were here to do. Raise a family, work jobs, build a business, whatever it is they do, they just go do it. They live a life. They know that's what they're supposed to be doing while they're here. They stay loyal to their friends and family, and they follow whatever religion they want, which is great and fine. And they come back. We all come back. There's no heaven waiting for us out there. You know, if you're looking for heaven, it's already right here if you see that it exists within you, because you are everything. Once you find a place of being resonant with yourself, you won't care what anybody thinks. You won't care what anybody does. You'll also realize that nobody's really paying attention. Nobody's going to walk up to you and say, you know, I've created this whole plan for your life, and I think you should listen to me because I know exactly what's going to bring you happiness. You know, nobody does that. We have to do that for ourselves. So, anyway, that's pretty much sums it up, what I wanted to say about frequency and vibration and my opinion on it. There's definitely frequency and vibration in the universe. You can see that physically through experiments. You can see that in the sun. The sun vibrates at a different frequency or vibration than a leaf in the shade. But the concept, the dogma, the concept of you need something outside of yourself to change your internal structural being, I question. What we need is to make decisions on how we want to change our life. And those decisions lead to us being a different person. We can decide to be good. We can decide to be loving. We can decide to be caring. We can decide to embrace whatever it is we want and take action on it. That's how we come home to the coherent being that we are. And it's not us. It's not us being coherent with, whatever our name and sex and race and nationality is, of being coherent with the universe, realizing that we are the universe. And every person we meet is an opportunity to say hello to ourselves. So that's what being kind to your neighbor is. You look at everybody else as an opportunity to be kind. All right, thank you.